Hey guys, what's up? Misha from GGD here, and today I've got something quite special to show you. As some of you may or may not know, I recently put out my Bulb solo album, Moderately Fast, Adequately Furious, and the first track off of that is called Unleash The Pwnies, and today I'm going to be showing you a project overview of that song. Now, I am using GGD all over that album, whether it is the drums, the cabs, or the compressor, which is on basically everything. So I figured, hey, might as well show you how this all sounds. And unlike the periphery stuff which I've shown in the past, usually that gets re-recorded. This is actually the project. This is the project of what you can hear on Spotify or YouTube, wherever you want to check it out. So let's jump right in. I'll play a few seconds if you're not familiar with this song. So yeah, very intense song. Why don't we start with the drums? So right here we have got, after the spinning wheel of death, we've got, and here we don't need to have the outputs open for this, just blocking the view. A Franken kit. And you know, I wanted to do something, I wanted to get away with something with this. If you listen to these drums, so this is obviously sort of tech death kind of vibes, and generally one would favor a higher tuned snare. It fits the style. It's actually what a tech death drummer might play just for the bounce and to be able to play those blast beats faster. And it also sort of sits outside of the mix. It'll interfere less with the guitars and things like that. But I wanted to see if I could get away with a bigger snare drum because I thought that's kind of a cool sound. It took a little bit of mix work and a little bit of tweaking, but I think I made it work. I mean, it's not like a low tune snare, but I'm using the VK, which is definitely a lot lower tune than, say, the reference brass, which is what I originally was using. Which sounds fantastic, but I just wanted to see if I could get away with dialing in a lower tune snare. I even messed around with the sensitone, which is quite low. And in all honesty, hearing that back, maybe I should have tried to make that work. I don't know. You guys can let me know whichever you prefer. I do think it's pretty cool that, like with our libraries, they are recorded in a way where you can switch the drums around and it will tend to work. Obviously, if I were switching to any other snare drum, I would make some sort of tweaks on the channel itself just to optimize it for the mix. But it's kind of cool that you can sort of audition and get a sense of how it would work for the mix. And sometimes it really doesn't take very much work. As you can see with those, would just take maybe a little bit of tweaking, leveling, or whatever, and it would sit perfectly. So I'm using the P4 kit for what am I using? I think let's see. I know what I've done. I forgot. In line with doing the lower tune snares, I was kind of worried there for a second. I was like, these toms aren't on, these toms aren't on, and these are always the ones that are on. But I specifically added Modern and Massive because you get these nice low tuned, like we have these Q drums here, very low tune. And again, for a death metal song, tech death, you'd want small toms or whatever. I was just going with a bigger drum philosophy, so everything is lower tuned here. So I'm just using the toms from Modern and Massive. There's a little bit of snare and no kick. Yeah, it's just the snare reinforcing there. And I have been absolutely loving the P3 snare, the main snare, just as a reinforcement on the snare. If you guys want to know how I'm setting up my Frankenstein kit, I have a video where I demonstrate exactly how that's all hooked up and how it works. We don't need to go over that now. But what you do need to know is that this P3 snare from the Halpern kit is magical. I now layer that on any kit that I'm using. if I'm doing a serious mix. And I love the array of cymbals that we have in Invasion, so we're using that. And I think I set this thing up so I could have both rides. So I could have a choice. They're both very sort of metal with big bells. But yeah, that's the drums right there. And as you can see, we'll look at them programmed here. So here, what ride are we using? I can't even find where we are in the song. There we go. So I had this one. I also had that. And that way I could just swap them around. I think I just like the way. Oops. We could look at this part here. So as you can see, or maybe not, I should clarify, I'm sort of straddling the line between realistic and just, you know, full on like drum programming, because death metal, tech death and all that, it's not necessarily concerned with realism. It's trying to sound sort of mechanical and robotic. So, you know, when you listen to even live drummers playing, they'll oftentimes have one-shot samples, you know, very, very sort of clicky kick drums, which, you know, when they're doing their super fast rolls, you could tell are not sort of humanized. They're quantized. They're all at the same level and everything. And I think that is something I associate with the effect of death metal or tech death or whatever. But as you can see, I am humanizing this stuff a little bit. And you know, it's just down to taste, but like, you know, if you had to, I feel like the kicks were kind of overwhelming everything. And this is a challenge with this kind of song. The everything I was trying to do is just everything is fighting for attention. Everything, the drums, the guitars, the bass, the layers, everything wants to be front and center, and everything is fast. Even the snare is taking more space than it should, and so are the toms. So it's a bit of a challenge to mix, at least for me. And I feel like I make my life harder by picking the kind of sounds I want. But that was the fun in it, was seeing if I could get all of this stuff to balance. So moving on to the next part of this. I ended up reamping the guitars. You know, I use plugins to record, because then you get to capture the DIs, and then you can reamp very easily. So I believe that's the Invective. That's what it's labeled as. I don't know for sure. We are, of course, going into Studio Cabzilla, and I like to do this way, where I will capture it without a cab sim so that I can change this on the fly. That way, if I wanted to, you know, add something. You know. Actually. That's not bad with that in, is it? Let's just mess with this on the fly because we can. But that is the beauty of this. Let's go, Fat Boy. And there's only 2 guitar tracks. There, guitar tone's different. Sounds a little better, I think. I don't know. You guys tell me what you think. But it is kind of cool that you can do that on the fly. So I recommend doing it that way, where you reamp, And so, you know, if I was using the Invective, as you can see right here, then that was going into my Sur load box via my Ampete 88S Studio amp switcher, which is the best thing ever because I could just swap those on the fly. I could swap the amps on the fly by just pressing a button, and even between two load boxes. I was favoring the Sur. It was just sounding very good for this. And then that's what was getting recorded. So if we actually monitor what was actually getting recorded, that horrible sound, and then you have your cab sim, which in this case and in all cases is the GGD Zilla Studio Cab Zilla. I always get that wrong. But you know, I really love these cabs, and I know it's my company, it's our product, I'm supposed to love it, but truthfully I don't have no obligation to use. I can use whatever I want. It's my mix. It's my solo album. I'm going to use what will sound best. And Nolly worked so hard on these cabs. Like, they're the best. They're just the best. They make everything sound better. Whenever I'm using a plugin, I'll replace whatever the cab is there with these cabs. Even cabs that Nolly has shot for Neural or whatever, like, I will still replace them with it because I love the Zilla cabs. I know how much work went into them. And I just know it really well. So it works. They sit very well in the mix. You guys want to hear something kind of cool? As long as this is labeled correctly, I don't know, but I believe this is. I had a loaner from Friedman, a BE100 Deluxe, which is a really cool amp. Has more knobs than or switches than what I know what to do with, but. Very different sound, as you can hear, right? And this is off the exact same DI, so this is the beauty of reamping, and I believe we're going into a similar cab setup. Yeah, I mean, I didn't add those cabs on there, but whatever, it's close enough. But if we solo these. You can hear the difference. I'm pretty sure this is actually the Invective. And I was favoring something that had that saturation to it. The Friedman is great. It's this British style thing. You get this very sort of tight attack, which is wonderful when you want to hear the pick attack. You can actually hear it super well on any part where there's like fast picked notes. Like those. That definition's awesome, right? And it gets kind of squashed there, but I love the saturation that you get out of, you know, the Invective's based off of 5150 style amp, and like you get this like really fat low end, low mid saturation out of it. So I ended up favoring that. You know, if you guys want to hear how it sounds in the mix, you guys can hear something that other people have not gotten to hear. So this is the Invective. And this is the Friedman. And I actually like the way it sounds for that part. It's not binding quite as well with the bass as I would like. And the saturation, I think, is partly to play with that. I love the definition I'm getting out of the notes. But then there are some parts like this part where it's very clear that it's at a disadvantage. Does sound really good. Now, if we compare that to the Invective, you hear that extra saturation that's happening there. Now, maybe you're listening and you prefer the Friedman. Great. I mean, that's the beauty of this, is you can get a bunch of amps and go with whichever way you want. And we are kind of splitting hairs here, but that's what you get to do when you're mixing and making these sort of decisions. But I do love the saturation that you get out of this, and this low mid thing that's going on. And I have this obsession with the guitar sort of binding with the bass. So I feel like that was a thing I was looking for as well. Now, of course, I could swap them riff by riff, and I had considered that, but I was actually really happy with the way if this is the effective or whatever amp I ended up reamping for this, however that was sitting, I was very, very happy with that. So I think I use these for some layers here for reinforcement. sounds kind of lame on its own, but in context, you know, if you have just a little booster there, so it cuts through, right? Ah, yeah. So I had the fast ones to match it, but I had the slower ones for the fundamental. See, I'm doing all these little tricks sometimes which aren't necessarily realistic, but sometimes you have a goal. I believe in the studio, you just work towards that goal. You do whatever you have to do to get the idea across, and I felt like that wasn't cutting enough without it, so I just threw those in. So it's not a lot of help, but it is very, very useful when the Friedman does come in. Moving on to the bass, which is kind of a mess but works. I always feel like bass sounds a lot better with drums. So I think everything that's a stereo track I tracked earlier on another session. The mono stuff's the stuff I retracked because I wasn't happy with it. So you can see I'm chopping it up like crazy. Sometimes it's because I can't play the part. Sometimes it's I want that section to just punch just right. So again, I don't really believe in cheating for this kind of stuff. For this, I was just using a Dingwall bass, one of Nolly's basses, into an Axe FX2 with a patch that I tweaked. It's an old Nolly bass patch that I tweaked that I've been using for bass forever, and it just kind of works, and I've always just kind of used that. Let's see what we've got on guitar processing and bass processing. Would you guys like to see that?
Yes!
Okay. All right. Yeah, so guitars. So we've got just the, you know, this is the bus here, so that's bypassed, and then with EQ. So we're cutting the low end because, again, don't need any of that stuff. And I'm not even cutting that much. You know, we have a high pass at 70, right? And it looks like we're just getting rid of some of the mud here around 150. And then around 500, that's kind of like... these are just frequencies that just kind of get muddy pretty quickly. And, like, getting rid of those makes more space for the snare and for things like that. This is a strategic cut here. 740 is what I like to 750. Sorry, is what I like to boost on the bass. So it's kind of like allowing the bass to like cut through and be kind of grindy in that frequency. And then the less of the guitar there, the more the bass can be kind of grindy there. And then these are just cuts I'm doing. This is a move I've been doing for like over a decade now. I don't even know if it's good or not, but like cutting around like 4 to 4.5, which I find to be a very harsh frequency. You know, like. You can hear that it's not very pleasant, but it does neuter it. There's some attack coming out of it, and I've always found that like boosting around 2.1 kind of helps with countering that a little bit. And then just a bit of a high shelf. I don't know, guitars are dark, I want them to be a bit brighter. That's a Nolly move. I don't know if he still does it, but I quite like it, so I don't want my guitars to be too dark. Then we are doing here, what are we doing? We're side chaining to the snare. And I believe, okay, this band is, let's see. Oh no, we're actually not side chaining. So right now we're just using, actually, it's probably because it was just a little too crazy with like all the snare hits. we're doing the Andy Sneap trick, which is just compressing the palm mutes, right? The lower frequency here. That way, so multi-band compression, just again, I've covered this before, but it's just compressing those lower frequencies so that when you're not overwhelming them, when you're not palm muting, and they're not ringing. You see, they're only really being triggered by palm mutes, and then it's kind of flattening out. And what it means is so that when you're palm muting and when you're open, your guitar should have a very similar size. And then, let's see what else we got here. This is just for a little bit of air, I guess. Just the tiniest bit. Oh, that's all it is. Just this little boost here. You barely hear it. Whatever. Probably wouldn't have noticed if that was on or off, but hey, there we go. All right, and for the bass, what do we have on the bass bus? So, and this is kind of more like shaping the sound here because, you know, I'm working with, if we turn everything off. Again, not fundamentally a different sound. We're just kind of tweaking it a little bit. So, that's the difference that makes. A little bit of R bass. Just extending the low end around like 80 there. What we got here? Virtual mix rack. Bit of Neve. We're actually taming the top end, adding a bit of low end. And I've been liking this Hollywood. Just for a little bit of saturation. It's probably like an Ermin cardinal sin. Sorry, Ermin, but you know, I like it. And then here we are side chaining. And this time we actually are, I believe. Or no, that's not even on either, is it? No, it is. So now we're side chaining the kick to, and this is another trick I like to do, is side chaining the kick. See, the other one we were doing is side chaining the snare to the guitar to make it cut every time the snare hits, but that was a bit much. But I guess I determined that it was still helpful for the bass. So now whenever the kick drum hits, it's just cutting this frequency of the bass, not the whole bass. It's reducing the volume of just this area here, which is, you know, like 100 to 200, like, yeah, let's call it 100 to like 300 is getting ducked every time there's a kick drum based off the intensity. It's a little trick that I like to use. It's actually a trick from electronic music, but I find if you just use it sort of sparingly or to a lesser amount, then it works quite well. And then this is just an Ermin thing. He's like, you got to clean up your 150, 250 before you send it to me for mastering. So I did. Taming bass, as you can see. That was for Ermin. Ermin, of course, mastered this and was my extra set of ears before I sent it to him for mastering. So appreciate the help, Ermin. Very, very helpful. Sometimes maybe you guys agree. You just get into a mix and you just get lost in it and nothing sounds good. You don't even know what's good. So having a pair of ears that you trust is very important. And in this case, you know, I'll send it off to I send it off to Nolly for some feedback. I send it off to Simon Grove. I send it off to a few people. But since Ermin actually was getting his hands on it specifically to master it, you know, his options are to fix it on his end or tell me to fix it on my end, which is a lot better, and that's what I did. As far as the drums, you know, we can quickly go over these. I don't want this to be too long, but as you can see, we use smash and grab. There's smash and grab all over the drums. The kick and snare exist because of smash and grab. And I have gone over this. This is actually pretty common. Like every time I've ever gone over the drums in my mixes, it's pretty similar philosophy. Maybe some EQ changes depending on what's going on here, but it is on all channels there because it is fantastic. I'm also using it for parallel compression with this setting here in the parallel mode because it is my favorite parallel compressor. And I have a decap bus which You know, it's kind of a weird thing. I don't know a lot of people who do it. I don't know I'm getting that much out of it, but it's just kind of built into my mix. And I'm using this crazy VSS3 reverb for my... It's literally just for the snare drum. And that's what that sounds like. Impressive, right? I guess the only other thing that we can go over before we wrap this up, which would be kind of fun, is just the ending. Pretty. So the original had this like clean ending, which I thought was like a very nice and perhaps much needed contrast to how just heavy and ugly the rest of the song is. And I was like, well, why not just go with it and really develop it a little bit further? So I kind of went all out, and we have all these layers here, right? So those are all guitar layers there. Very pretty, right? And then I decided to add some synths to that. So we've got some pads here. What are we using here? Well, I call them pads, but we're basically using strings. So this is Spitfire chamber strings, which I love, and Spitfire Albion Tundra, which I love as well. Then I wanted a little like ARP in there, so just using Serum. And it's so funny, it's literally just the initial patch. I just, you know, ran it through its filter and just like made a little pluck sound using the ADSR. But this is like not even a patch, this is literally just this default sound. It's just the saws, but they're very good saws. You take the effects off, and that's all it is. Using some Valhalla delay, which I've been a fan of. Black Hole, which I put on absolutely everything, including my toast. And, you know, kind of carving space. The thing about synths and all that is you have to be careful with the space on them, because they can so easily overwhelm everything. Like metal mixes, rock mixes are kind of small compared to electronic sounds, which are all pure. So you always have to shape them so they don't overwhelm things. But yeah, it's ARP sound. I think it sounds pretty cool. One of the best secret weapons. I shouldn't even be showing you guys this because it's the best secret weapon ever. But finishing move post-human, made by the Triphonic guys. So good. The orchestral tools, like using their, I think it's their time library. Oh, that comes in here. Just really cool sounds. Using Gin Bass for this because it's easy. And it's great. Sounds great. Thanks, Ermin. And what piano are we using? Oh, we're using both. Both of my favorite pianos ever. Fracture Sounds, Midnight Grand, and Woodchester. And then I think we are using my Moog Minitor here. Doesn't sound like much, but it adds. And the clean sound. Oh no, that's just the bass. So all together, decided to add some drums here, you know, give it some vibes. So it's like surprisingly the same drum sound. Kind Kind of works out well. Throw in those, I don't even know what that is, but just changing the rhythm to the something to do with threes. I'm really bad with this kind of stuff, but just keeping the pattern going there. I don't know, kind of like that. But yeah. There you go. That's basically a little mix overview. I mean, you can see what's on the master bus. So always, just got a basic EQ. This is the top, this is top-down mixing as Nolly taught me. So just into a basic EQ, into my favorite, like the SSL bus compressor. SSL bus compressor with a high-pass filter, which makes it basically ignore the kicks. So it's just pumping off the snare. This is kind of my philosophy. Some people hate this, but I like it. You have the snare. It's so I can get the snare nice and loud. What, I listen to too much Deftones, sue me. So that helps it punch through. Here I'm doing some funky mid-side stuff, so basically just deleting the stereo signal out of the low end there. Basically helping Ermin out on the mastering end. He's probably doing more on his end as well. This is a really funky left-right kind of EQ setting that Nolly sent me just to create a little bit more width by having it be a bit uneven on both sides. And then another mid-side because why not? Because I might have missed it the first time, I guess. It's probably redundant. And then this eventually got taken off when I sent it to Ermin to get master, but I like Pro L just on my end, though I'm sure he has his gripes with it. But yeah, that's the song. So hopefully you guys have learned a thing or two and seen my approach, and now when you listen to the song, you can see the project in your head. Or something like that. Anyways, thanks so much for bearing with me, guys. Thanks so much for watching. And if you like this, I'll do more for the other songs. And I'll catch you soon enough. Bye.